Shalom Aleichem. Peace to everybody. Shalom Lekulam. And welcome to the Hebrew Foundations course. This is an 8-week beginner course for adults. Let's dive right into it, shall we? I think we shall. So here is the course overview for for the entire Hebrew Foundations course, right? So in this course, we're going to cover the following. Over the course of 8 weeks, we're going to talk about during the first couplets of weeks, it's going to be an introduction, followed by module 1, which is talking about the Aleph Beit. And then in weeks 3 and 4, we're going to talk about module 2, which is going to cover the Nikudim, followed by weeks 5 and 6, we're going to talk about numbers and colors. And then in weeks 7 and 8, we'll talk about the Hebrew Mishkalim, or Hebrew noun patterns, and the 7 Binyanim, or the 7 Hebrew verb patterns. All right? So let's continue, shall we? I think we shall. So about the Hebrew instructor. So Shemi Yoel ben Yisrael. My name is Yoel ben Yisrael, and I've been studying Hebrew in an autodidact, immersive manner for 13 years now and counting. This includes me writing in Hebrew, me reading Hebrew, mainly pointed Hebrew texts, and me speaking in Hebrew audibly. So I was a student of a Hebraist who goes by the name of Yehoiakin Mare Yisrael, right? So Yehoiakin, he's been teaching Hebrew for 38 plus years. So he's been doing this for a long time. And he's helped me deepen my linguistic and semantic understanding as one of his Hebrew students. And he was a huge help on my journey and trajectory as I'm progressing on to Hebrew mastery. Right now, I would say I'm on the intermediate level, but I feel like I'm on my way to becoming a Hebraist, an Israelite Hebraist. So I pray this course will be a blessing to you all if you so choose to tap in, twin. Okay, so course warm up. This is what I would do in the course. When people would be on, I would just kind of like an icebreaker, have people state your name, what state you're in, and what first sparked your interest to learn Hebrew in the first place. I'll just share with you all. You already know my name, obviously, Yoel Ben Yisrael. I'm currently in the state of Michigan right now. And what first sparked my interest in the Hebrew language was when I heard Dr. Miles Monroe. He was actually preaching and talking and teaching to an audience, I believe I think he was in the South or either talking to his home assembly in Nassau, Bahamas. He was quoting Matthew 4:17, and he said, "Repent, because the kingdom of heaven has arrived." This is what it says in the Hebrew text. And I went to the Hebrew text, and lo and behold, I saw that the Hebrew text, an iteration of Franz Delitzsch, is Hebrew New Testament edition, said in Matthew 4:17, Min ha'et, ha'hiachel Yahushua likro karo ve'emor shubu ki higia malkut hashamayim. From that time, Yahushua began to preach and to proclaim and to say, repent, change the way you think, because the kingdom of heaven has arrived. And so that sparked my interest to learn Hebrew all the more so, right? So yeah, there we go. It's a little bit about me. So the introduction overview is going to go a little bit like this. In this introduction, we're going to cover the following. Part 1, the evolution or the changes of the Hebrew language over time. And then we're going to talk about in part 2, the variety of Hebrew scripts. So, introduction, part 1, the evolution of the Hebrew language. Let's talk about it. Ibrit Mikra'it, biblical Hebrew. So this is the Hebrew of most of the Hebrew Bible, right? When we talk about the Hebrew Bible, we are talking about the Tanakh, which is an acronym. It means the Torah, the Nebaim u Ketubim, the Torah or the law, the prophets, and the writings. The time period of the of Ibrit Mikrait, or Biblical Hebrew, is circa 1200 BCE to 200 BCE. And where can you encounter Biblical Hebrew? You may ask, you may ponder. You can find it like I was articulating before in the Tanakh, in the Torah, Nebaim, Uketubim, and looks like the Psalms and also Isaiah and other prophets, Israelite prophets as well. Now, here's some characteristics of Biblical Hebrew. There's archaic grammar and vernacular. The verb system is quite nuanced from modern Hebrew. Many words are no longer used in daily speech. They call this fixed phraseology or frozen phraseology. And it was originally written without nikudim, or what we call today the vowel points. Mishnaic or Rabbinic Hebrew, Ibrit Mishnait or Ibrit Rabbini. Is also called Tanaitic Hebrew. The time period of this is circa 200 BCE to 500 AD. Now, you will encounter this when you read things like the Mishnah or portions of the Talmud and the Midrash. I don't personally subscribe to any of those three, but that's where you will find this style of the Hebrew language, Mishnaic or Rabbinic Hebrew. Some characteristics include more conversational and pragmatic aspects of Rabbinic and Mishnaic Hebrew. It's slightly influenced by Aramite or Aramaic, and the grammar begins shifting toward later Hebrew as well. Let's continue. Medieval Hebrew, Ibrit Yemei Habenaim. Right, so the time period for medieval Hebrew is circa 500 AD to 1800 AD. Now, where, oh, where can you encounter this text? You can find it in philosophy and Yahudi philosophy, in poetry and religious commentaries, in science and in legal texts. You can find medieval Hebrew, right? Ibrit Yemei Habeneim. You can find it there. Characteristics, or actually, let me go back to the famous writers of medieval Hebrew. When we talk about Ibrit Yemei Habenaim, famous writers of medieval Hebrew are Maimonides and Judah HaLewi. Now, characteristics of medieval Hebrew, this would be the Hebrew during this era was mainly literary and scholarly, right? Used to write a lot of scholastic literature. And it's not usually a native spoken language, not usually. Modern Hebrew, Ibrit Modernit. Time period for this is the late 1800s to right now. A major figure, now this is contestable. Someone say Eliezer ben Yehuda is famous for reviving the Hebrew language to be a spoken everyday language, but that's contestable because some would posit, like the YouTube channel Milk, I think it's no milk meat, something like that. Forgive me, sisters, if I'm butchering YouTube channel, but they would say that it was actually preserved by a community that existed long before Eliezer ben Yehuda slid onto the scene. Characteristics would include fully modern spoken language, simplified grammar compared to Biblical Hebrew or Ibrit Mikra'it, and massive vocabulary expansion due to the innovations of modernity, right? And I have a footnote here regarding Hebrew pronunciation traditions. Basically, what I'll say here for now is there are many different Hebrew pronunciation traditions, like Ashkenazic, it's probably the most popular, like Yemenite pronunciation traditions, like Sephardic, right? Or Mizrahi pronunciation traditions, right? Some may even say Ladino. So there are different pronunciation traditions within the Hebrew language. All right, introduction, part 2, the variety of Hebrew scripts. Let's walk through this. So throughout this course, I'll be referencing literary works like the following. So a grammar of biblical Hebrew translated and revised by Takamitsu Muraoka. And fun fact, He is a Japanese Hebraist. Yes, that's very cool. A Grammar for Biblical Hebrew by Chun Leong So. He, another fun fact, is a Chinese Hebraist, right? Very cool. And lastly, Introduction to Biblical Hebrew by Thomas O. Lambden. So I'll be quoting these books, and I would like to say this before I continue. The most user-friendly out of all three that I have mentioned here on the screen would be this guy right here, Chun Leong So, the Chinese Hebraist, a grammar for biblical Hebrew. And I tell you, his read is very user-friendly, and he does a phenomenal job at taking complex ideas and distilling them into simple concepts. So on your Hebrew journey, I would encourage you, if you want to check him out. A Grammar for Biblical Hebrew by Chun Leong So. All right. So let's observe how the Hebrew script changed and morphed and evolved over time. So first we have the Proto-Canaanite pictographs here. This is circa 1800s to 1700 BCE, right? And this would be Kitub Proto-Kanaani. Kitub Proto-Kanaani. Proto-Canaanite pictographs appear in the southern Levant and Sinai, notably at Sedabit el-Kadim. These symbols that we see to our right here, the Aleph, ox head all the way down to this upright stake, some may call it a cross even, were simplified pictures representing consonantal sounds. Next, we see the script of the Phoenician script. This is circa 1050 to 300 BCE, right? And so this would be called Ha-Tasrit Ha-Peniki. Ha-Tasrit Ha-Peniki. This emerged along the Levantine coast of, this is modern day Lebanon today. It is an ancestor of Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, Latin, and many other languages. This is a consonantal alphabet. I'll talk more about that later in the course if you are interested in joining. Angular carved friendly shapes. And the Hebrew and Phoenician were originally very close visually. Next up, we have the Proto-Hebrew script. This is circa 1000 to 586 BCE. And in Hebrew, that would be Ha-Tasrit Ha-Proto-Ibri, right? Ha-Tasrit Ha-Proto-Ibri. This was used by ancient Israelites and Judeans, essentially a local Hebrew variant of Phoenician. And it's seen in inscriptions like the Siloam inscription. You can find this type of font here. When you think of Hebrew scripts, I would encourage you to think of them like a font, because that's exactly what they are. You know how like when you go on a laptop and you can change your font to Georgia or Times New Roman or Arial? Think of it like a font. The font of the Hebrew text changed over time. It continued after 586 BCE in some religious contexts. This is the script most people mean by when they say ancient biblical Hebrew writing, the Proto-Hebrew scripts. Next up, we have the Samaritan script, right? Ha-Tasrit, Ha-Shom Roni, Ha-Tasrit, Ha-Shom Roni. It descended from Proto-Hebrew, not from the square script. It's preserved by the Samaritan community after the Babylonian exile in 586 BCE. And another fun fact, it's still used today in the Samaritan Torah. And this script has been used circa from 600 BCE even till right now. The classical Hebrew square script. This is come on the scene circa or about 500 BCE to 100 AD. This would be entitled in Hebrew, Katab Ashodi, O or Katab Meruba. So Katab Ashori, O, Aleph Waw, which is or in Hebrew, Katab Meruba, Meruba'a, right? Katab Meruba'a. So this is derived from Imperial Aramaic. It's adopted during and after the Babylonian exile. It became predominant in Hebraic religious texts, the basis of modern printed Hebrew as well. So when you find things that are printed within modernity, they will use the classical Hebrew square script, right? Katab Me Ruba'a. This is the script that's going to be used predominantly in this Hebrew Foundations course. And this is a script that I write in almost exclusively. And I would even say exclusively. This is the script that I am most familiar with. This script is habitually utilized in the writing of Sifrei Torah, books of the Torah, the Tanakh, Siddorim, right, prayer books, and books in this generation or books of modernity. Next, we have the modern Hebrew cursive, right? Katab Rahut, Katab Rahut. And so has emerged from the 10th to the 15th centuries AD. Early medieval Hebrew cursive develops in Yahudi communities across Europe and the Islamic world, used for everyday writing like letters, notes, and documentation, alongside the formal square script, which we just saw in the previous slide. From 1500 to 1600 AD, distinct cursive traditions stabilized, especially the Sephardi cursive, which becomes the main ancestor of what we now call modern cursive Hebrew. In the late 1800s to the early 1900s AD, with the revival of Hebrew as a spoken language, cursive Hebrew is standardized in education in Ottoman and then mandatory Palestine. And in the 20th century AD, the cursive forms taught in Israeli schools becomes the modern cursive Hebrew used for today. The Rashi style Hebrew script emerged around 1100 to 1200 AD, Rashi Ibrit, and this script developed in medieval Europe. It's named after Rashi, a European Tanakh Talmudic commentator, though he did not invent this type of script. It's used mainly for commentaries and secondary texts, and is predicated on Sephardic semi-cursive hand writing. Not cursive, not square, a commentary font tradition. All right, so I'm going to stop it right there. If this has whet your appetite for the Hebrew Foundations course, and I'm going to go back to the beginning. Hebrew Foundations course, or that would be Yesodot HaIbrit in Hebrew. If that's whet your appetite and galvanized you to say, you know what, I've been putting off learning Hebrew for a long time, and I really want to learn it, then this could definitely well be your opportunity to tap in and learn Hebrew today. And so it's it's called the Hebrew Foundations course. It's an 8-week beginner course for adults. And once again, I'll come off the screen. I'll stop sharing. My name is Joel Ben Israel, and I'll be more than happy and elated to have you in the Hebrew Foundations course. So until then, Shalom Aleichem. Peace to you all.